Hey guys, I'm Dimension Jumper and today I'll be reviewing Crash Bandicoot 4, which was released on the 16th of September of 2020 and it was released for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox X1 series and the Nintendo Switch. Now, this game takes place like 20 or 30 or so years after Crash 3, and if you've managed to beat all of Crash 3, like you collected all the crystals and stuff like that, then you'll be given a cutscene in which Cortex, Entropy, and Uka Uka were sent into a different dimension, and Entropy and Cortex had been turned into babies, and now in this game they're now back into their full-grown selves. And Uka Uka basically summons this portal dimensional thing, and it basically there's a hole or several holes in the dimensional rift, and it's basically up to Crash, Aku Aku, and Coco to basically fix all of the portals by collecting various masks that have reality warping properties, and then the masks can then basically fix the rift. And I think that the story of the game is an interesting one. It's a very different one compared to the original three Crash games, because if you look at the three mainline Crash games, it's basically Crash stopping stopping Cortex from collecting a certain amount of crystals or gems, or creating an army of minions. And I think the plot is quite fresh, and basically this game has a lot of the old Crash formula. So like you've got your traditional levels where you go from one end to the next, breaking boxes, collecting gems, fighting off various bosses, that sort of thing. But then you've got the whole dimensional warping rift thing, and I think that's what makes the game great, because of you've got one thing, you're in one reality, and then the next you're in another reality, and that's that's one of the few things that makes the game great, because of all of those different things. Because the levels themselves are shown throughout different realities. So you've got your normal reality, which is basically the beach that Crash lives on, or I think, and then you've got a desert reality, and then you've got one filled with pirates, then you've got a sort of party one, and it goes on and on. And I think the whole dimensional thing is an interesting idea, because you've got all these different dimensions, they've got all the different levels. It kind of reminds me of the original Crash game, when the closer you got to Cortex, the more technical the levels got in terms of their design. Because if you take, let's say, the first level, when you're on the beach, I think Insanity Beach, and then you take one of the later levels, towards the end of the game, you're in one of Cortex's labs and stuff like that, and you can clearly tell that those two levels are completely different. And then when you look at the first level of this game, and then one of the later levels, there's a level that's in the sort of party type reality, you can clearly see again that these are two very different levels, and they're very, very much different. And now I'm going to show you some gameplay. Now, the gameplay is very, very similar to all the other Crash games, but it takes a lot of its style from Crash 2 and 3. So in terms of that, by what I mean by that is basically you can just crawl or slide like you could do in Crash 2 and 3. But you also have this double jump, which I think is quite useful, because then you could just pull off some crazy feats. So let's say what I'm doing right now, at the beginning of this level, offbeat, is that I could just jump from one platform to another platform that might have been impossible for me to get if I didn't have the double jump. And yeah, this I feel like that the game, the graphic wise, is probably a lot better than the graphics on the Insane trilogy. Because I think it's because it's more color. There's a bit more color to this game than there was in the Insane trilogy. I'm not saying that the Insane trilogy didn't have a lot of color. I'm just saying that Crash 4 feels a lot more colorful, a bit more, a lot more good looking. I don't know. Looks a lot more colourful and a bit more upbeat than a bit more upbeat than the one than the graphics in the Insane trilogy. I do enjoy the Insane trilogy, but what I like about Crash 4, in particular over Crash 1, 2, and 3 in the Insane trilogy, is that I don't know if you can see it on the floor. But Crash has this sort of yellow circle thing, and basically they can tell you where you're going to land, which I think is a real help and a big improvement, because then you can see where you're going to jump, where you're going to land, how high well, not really high, how high you might be in the sky, but just like where your character is before you land on the ground, that sort of thing. And I just think that's really helpful and useful. Yeah, and okay, so you can basically, I think that's really useful, and depending on which level you do, you will have a variety of crates. So for example, this level has 215, while let's say the first level has 104 crates that you have to break, and that is a lot. That's a lot. Not even the first level in the first game had that many. I think that the first level in the first game had like around, I don't know, I can't remember. It's been so long since I played the first one. But I think the first level in the first game had like somewhere around 80 or 90. I think 80 or possibly 70 boxes before in that level before this game came out with 107 boxes. So yeah, and now I'm going to show you the map. And one of the problems I have with Crash 4, probably one of the few ones, is that the loading screens take a bit long to do. I just think they were a bit too long. It would have been fine if it was like 5 seconds, 10 seconds before you could go to the map, but it just feels like too long. And this is the map. This is what the map looks like. So you can basically just hop around different dimensions, and if you want to do that, you can basically just grind on these dimensional rail things, and you can see that the entire map is different. Like, you can go to different realities, and I think that's really nice and really interesting. And I just feel like the map is a really cool one. And also, you depending on which level you do, there are 4 or 5 different colored gems, and I think you need all of them if you want to do a particular optional route that you can do in one of the later levels. And you can see that there's the normal level and the inverted level, and they're basically, I'm going to show you an inverted level to show you how different the game is, because you get the inverted levels quite early in the game. I think after you beat the second boss, Embryo. But yeah, I'll explain more about the inverted levels later in the game, or later in the review. But I'm just going to show you how different inverted levels are compared to normal levels. So depending on which level you do, all the inverted levels are quite different, I think, depending on which dimension that you're in. So for example, with the first 2 levels in the first dimension, I think, the normal one that you're in, it's a sort of light up levels. So basically, if you do like something like slide or spin, you can light up the whole level ahead of you or around you. And I think that's really nice and really cool, because it's basically you have to it's basically more of a think before you jump sort of scenario type level, which I think is quite nice, because then you can basically just have to predict where you're going to jump and how far the next platform is or something like that. And yeah, I think the Infested Levels are yeah, hit that quick. I think the Infested Levels are nice. And I think they're like a nice placement to be in, because then you can just just play the game again, or like play it differently somehow. I think very differently. Yeah, and I just really like the Infested Levels, and I died by one of the enemies in the first level, first few levels. So yeah, I think the Infested Levels are somewhat of a nice change of pace to this game than the other Crash games have done, because with the Crash games, like, you know, in the Insane trilogy, those games just had you just beating levels. Normally you getting all the different gems, all the different crystals if you're playing Crash 2 or 3, doing all of the time trial relics, that sort of thing. And I think that the Infested Levels are a nice breath of fresh air and a nice change of pace, because, you know, you can basically just do the same levels but differently, and I think that's really cool now. And now I'm going to show you some of the other different levels in the game. So I'm just going to show you the final 2 type of levels you can do, and also if you're playing Crash 4, if you want to switch between Crash or Coco, press the square button so you can choose between either Crash or Coco. And also, if you want to choose different costumes, press triangle, and you can basically change which character or which costume you want to do for different characters. So I might go with Serious Upgrade. And so yeah, so I'm going to play through a flashback tape and just show you how a flashback tape is level is done, and then I'm going to show you the final other kind of level that you can do in Crash 4. Oh, okay, I thought you could play as either Crash or Coco in the game, in the flashback levels. So, the flashback levels are basically levels that you can do throughout the game, but I'll explain a bit more about how you can play these levels later in the review. But I think the flashback levels are a nice sort of way of playing the game, because these are basically harder levels. Because if you play, like, you know, the original Crash games, I think the first one, if you played any of the bonus levels in that game, you would understand how difficult those ones were once you get to playing the flashback tapes, because they can be difficult. And yep, there we go, that's one. Yeah, I screwed myself by saying that. So yeah, and this is all basically before Crash or Coco escaped Cortex. And I like it how in I just realised in the bottom left hand corner you could see that date in which you can see when it's done. So if you look at the bottom left, it's the 1st of the 1st, 1996, which I think is like a really nice thing, because again, it's like the little details that make this game really enjoyable, and just shows you how fun this is. And now I'm going to show you like the last sort of level, but before that I'm going to show you how Coco works other than Crash, because, like, you know, with Crash he works, you know, like Crash in the original games, but with Coco I think she plays quite differently in this game and in the Insane trilogy like she plays differently to Crash in this game and in the Insane trilogy. And I think the costumes are quite nice. I think they're quite enjoyable to play around with because you can like just play through a certain level as, you know, Crash, but he's in his normal form on PlayStation 1. You've got Crash as a chicken. You've got Coco as a cyborg. So yeah, with Coco, I think her spin is vastly different. Like, you know, to mess about with, because like I think it's more of like it's more of a kick spin. I think I'm not 100% sure. And also that reminds me, in a lot of the levels, depending on how you might play a particular level, there might be some levels that you might miss crates, and you will have to replay a lot of levels if you want to get like every single box. That's like, you know, that can be a difficult thing to do because you have to like beat a particular level, and then you might have missed like 1 or 2 boxes, and you will have to play that level again if you want to find the remaining 2 boxes. So yeah, and I think the costumes, bringing back the costumes again, I think the costumes work fine. I think they're sort of interesting, and I think they're using the level quite nicely because it's basically kind of like how I played with the Wild, in which I'll play through a particular part of the game when I'm wearing like the highly armor tunic, or I might be wearing the rubber armor if I'm trying to do a particular mission, but I'm in lightning, that sort of thing. And I think that's kind of the same with Crash 4. Yeah, I think it's really cool because, like, you know, the costumes are sort of like a nice sort of like enjoyable collectible to play through and just have a nice enjoyable time. And now I'm going to show you the final level that you can do in the game. So the final type of level that you can do in Crash 4 is About Time is a character specific or different character stage, in which you can either play as Cortex, Torna, or Dingodile, and I'll explain that later in the review. But you can play as any of those guys, and they all have their own thing, like their own spin kick attack, their own like thing. So for instance, for Torna, if this can load, there we go. So for she's basically got like a sort of like kick, and she's also got a grappling hook. So it's like, there we go. So she can use that to get like certain crates, hit certain enemies, and also she's had like this sort of like pound attack with her fist, and also she can use her grappling hook to basically get from one area of the map to the other, and also she can like basically climb onto walls, which I think is a really nice ability, and I think it's really nice and interesting. And also this is Torna from another dimension, because if you played any of the games in the Insane trilogy, or just any of the original levels, you will notice that Torna only appeared in the first Crash game, and she was never put in the other games, or the mainline games, and I think it's because of her design. I think that's because of it, like for the time. So yeah, I think that's why Torna wasn't really in any of the other mainline Crash games. I think she was in Crash, the Crash racing game, I think, but she wasn't really in the mainline other games like Crash 2 or 3. But she is in this game, but from another dimension, which I think is quite nice and interesting. And also, when you play a level, like the first one you play as her in the Pirate Realm, she will say that that she doesn't really get to see her version of Crash or Coco, and then Coco will say that both she and Crash doesn't get to see their version of Torna, which I think is a nice little sort of like in-universe Easter egg of saying like, oh, because we don't get to see Torna from our reality, it's like, because of reasons. And I think that's really nice and interesting. Like, kind of, and yeah, okay. So that's been it for the review, and now it's time. Oh no, that's been it for the gameplay. Now it's time to go back to the review. So the masks all have different abilities. So the first one you get is one that can basically shift between realities. So depending on which level you're playing, you've got one that you might have a level that has like some invisible platforms, and then you have to use the mask to basically make that particular platform appear. And then you've got one that can make you go. Allow you to spin infinitely, and it can also create, or no, not create. It can break all the metal boxes, which is basically a lot better. And also, it can give you sort of like better jumps, because your jumps are basically more floatier than they are in when you're not using the mask ability. There's one that can make you do like sort of like anti-grav, which I think is nice. And you've got one that can like slow down time for like a few seconds. And I think all the masks are quite nice and useful, because they all help out in different ways, and they can always, depending on which level you're playing, can always be there in certain parts of the level. Now, if you're a casual fan or a casual player, then this game might take you a few hours. Like if you're going from the start of the game to the very end of the game when you get to face the final boss. But if you're a completionist and you like to complete games, then you will be in Crash for quite a long time, because not only do you have to play the games normally and collect gems and do the time trials, but for the gems in particular, there are 6 gems instead of the normal 1 or 2, depending on which level that you're playing in previous Crash games. And so you've got 3 gems for getting all the Wumpa Fruit, 1 gem for breaking every single box, another gem for finding a hidden gem, and another one for dying 3 times or less in a particular level. And then you have to get all of the the platinum relics in the time trials. But then there's the inverted levels. Now the inverted levels only appear once you've beaten the second boss, which is Embryo. And basically what the inverted levels are basically the same levels, but with a different color palette, and they're flipped horizontally. And that means you have to do, again, collect 3 gems for finding all the Wumpa Fruit, 1 gem for finding a hidden one, 1 for dying 3 times or less, and 1 for breaking all of the boxes. And that will put you through your test. That will put you to your limit, because you'll have to remember. You have to remember the normal level when it was not flipped and not having a different color palette, but the hidden gem is in a different place than the original hidden gem was. So, for instance, with the hidden gem in the first level, it's in the inverted stage. It's the very beginning of the stage, near the beach, or I think on the beach, and you have to go back, get the gem, then continue onwards. And yeah, I say good luck to anyone who wants to complete Crash 4, because that game will put you through your test. And if you want to get the final true hidden ending, in which you get to see Cortex lying on a beach, and Uka, I think it's Uka appears, and it's sort of tease to a possible possible Crash 5, and Yeah, because like I think if you want to get the true hidden ending with Cortex and Uka Uka, I think you have to like play through all the levels without dying, and I think also not crashing, breaking all the boxes. I think because you'll be given these sort of like trophy medal things, which say, oh, you've reached a particular level without dying. Oh, and also forgot to mention that there are these flashback tapes that basically appear in various levels. Like not all of them. I think like there's like around 20 to 25, possibly 30. I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on that. Flashback tapes. Now, the only way to get these flashback tapes are basically you can't die once throughout the entire level. So they might appear, let's say, halfway through the level or somewhere around the beginning of the level, but then there might be ones that appear towards the end of the level. So if you want to get those flashback tapes, you have to basically go through the entire level without dying, and then you can get the flashback tape. But these flashback tapes are basically levels in which you can play as Coco or Crash before they escaped Cortex. And also there's also several side levels in which you can play as some of the side characters like Cortex, Torna, I think that with this one here, I think I'm pronouncing that word right, and Dingo Dial. So you don't only play as Crash or Coco, and for those levels, they're basically sort of like side levels in which you go through the game, how you would normally do in a normal level, but then in certain areas, you'll go and destroy a particular area, and then for the rest of the level, you'll have to play as either Crash or Coco. And again, those Dingodile, Torna, and Cortex levels, they also have an inverted level, and you have to do the same things, so like collect the hidden gem, Wampa fruit gems, box gems, die 3 times or less gem, and you have to do that again if you want to get like everything. And also there's costumes you can get that depends on how many gems you have. You have to collect a certain amount to get each costume, and they can range from having Crash look like the original a version of himself on the PlayStation 1. You can have have either Crash or Coco look like a different animal or something like that. And yeah, again, you will be purchased for your pace if you want to complete Crash 4, and yeah, it will take a long time for you to do if you want to complete that. But for my final verdict for this game, I would say that Crash 4 is worth it. I think this game is probably a really good and solid game. I think it's a lot better than the other Crash games, like even the ones on the Insane trilogy. I think Crash 4, It's About Time, is a solid game. I think it's a solid sort of continuation of the original Crash games, and I think it's a really good continuation of like the Crash gameplay formula, and it can also be a lot of fun. And I enjoy the whole reality warping plot thing where you can basically just go through different areas and just play through a lot of really fun and interesting levels. So that's been my review for Crash 4 It's About Time. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.